Greetings of peace. For those of you who may not be familiar with me, I'm Jonathan Bay. For this particular presentation, I'm going to respectfully remove my fez as not to confuse some who may assume that I am a sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America. I am not. I wear my fez out of respect, not relative to an ecclesiastic title. I respect and support monetarily the Moorish Science Temple of America, but I am not speaking from the position as an official of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Today I am speaking purely as a loving, caring family member who wants to take this opportunity to provide you with some important information. For this particular information, I have made myself a series of notes. This index of notes is simply so that I can keep a correct chronology of the information that follows. Much of what I have to say during this presentation, and it will be entitled Moor Talk Episode 14, may for some seem far-fetched, even contrived. But I assure you, every aspect of what you are about to hear is absolutely true in every aspect of its nature. If you are a Moor, then you are by pure default genius. It is in fact the genes in us which have afforded us all, each Moor, opportunity to reanimate the exceptional brilliance which lies innately latent in us all, temporarily dormant, awaiting that inevitable rejuvenation. With the resources of your melanin's genetic memory lies a virtual treasure trove of epiphanies awaiting reactivation. That is one reason we are, by some, so very feared. This is how it works. Well, you've all heard the saying from time to time, study, study, study. And yes, that's absolutely extremely key and important. However, and this is a huge capitalized however, it must not only be the correct information, it must also be received in a correct chronology or order. There are degrees to understanding, but there are particular articulations, positionings of how that information should best be received. As you read the correct information or consume it by whatever manner, in the correct degrees and correct articulation, a natural reconnection begins to manifest. There is not only a great deal of bad information proliferating on the internet these days, there's a huge amount of disinformation being purposefully interjected into the collective consciousness of those who are only now naturally seeing that it is their time to reanimate their cognitive awareness of self. When we all arrive here in the objective plane of this dimension's perceived reality, by our own volition, we each possess our own uniquely created vibratory frequency. It's an oscillation, a unique wobble, if you will. Everything has a vibration to it, as unique as your fingerprint. A harmonic resonance, a vibration, unique to you yourself alone. Just as no two objects can occupy the same space in objective reality, no two vibratory frequencies can exist within the same location in what we call the superset of our subjective plane of reality. The superset is that out of which our objective plane of reality manifests. Think of it similar to this: an old radio dial. As you take the dial and you turn it, it begins to dissipate in the noise and fog or static that you would hear, which gives way to clarity of the frequency that you're trying to reach, like 99.5 on your FM dial. As you turn into it, it will become clearer and clearer, and then crystal clear. The same is true with respect to one who is recalibrating their neurofiber network's vibratory frequency. Every individual's place in this perceived reality, this place we call the objective reality, the place in which objects exist, exists within a greater superset, which is called the subjective reality. And as I said, as we, through our own volition and desire, enter into this realm of our perceived objective reality, we come in with a perfect, harmonious nature. Each of us uniquely possessing our own frequency. Just as no two objects, as stated, can exist within the same plane of existence in an objective realm, no two frequencies, vibratory tones, can exist within the subjective realm of reality. But as we enter here in our perfect state, our harmonious resonance becomes discordant. We become out of tune with nature. And that has been done purposefully. Now, if nature is nothing else, it is definitively and absolutely efficient. You may have heard the term or the phrase of saying that the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line. Well, this is true also within the neurofiber network of your actual cellular brain's workings. It's not intended to be going all around in a method that would be illogical in order to reach a particular one synapsis that is to be joined with another, finding one another. That's not natural. When the prophet said, returning to the mindset of your ancient forebearers, the mastermind was actually speaking from a truly biological, physiological, neurofiber network remapping of your neurofiber networks. In other words, we have been so distuned, misprogrammed, disconnected, short-circuited to an extent, that it has been virtually over millennium impossible for many to come into a correct state of mind, as it were. Literally, many of us have lost our minds. What's occurring now, however, as we are receiving this correct information in the correct manner and the correct articulation, when I say articulation, I'm talking about the order in which it is received and the degrees in which we are being presented with the information, the correct source information. What happens in our rejuvenation periods, period of sleep, is that there is a remapping, a rewiring, a reconnecting of the natural neural fiber networks of our brain's ability to connect those natural synapses in a way that are most natural. When that occurs, and as you continue to enjoy of this new information, within the melanin of your genetic makeup, the genes in us, that genius begins to unlock the genetic memories, as well as allows for there to be a shifting of that natural vibratory frequency, which is yours and yours alone. And as you begin to re-oscillate, because everything vibrates, to your particular frequency, when you are recalibrating your own particular vibratory frequency and coming back in tune with nature, and things begin to come clearer and clearer, and the static begins to dissipate, and you start getting those epiphanies of brilliance and understandings and comprehension from your Akashic records and the information that is not from books alone, but actual information that is encoded data within the melanin of your physical biological makeup. This is an awakening that is transpiring right now. So, what we're going to do is we're going to begin to identify the processes, the methodology by which this occurs. Everything is a science. If it's not a science, then it does not exist. Even law is a science. Matter of fact, law is the primary science, because all things are governed by law. It doesn't matter what it is. If I take this pen, I lift it, and I let it go, that's the law of gravity. If I stick my hand into fire, I burn myself, because that's the law of thermodynamics. If I touch an electrical outlet, I shock myself. That's the law of electricity. Even those strange and exotic laws that happen near or within black holes that we yet understand are all aspects of governing rules of order. Catalysts, actions, reactions, cause and effect. That's law. And when you bring all of the laws together, that determines how things operate, the functionality. These are methodologies by which things function. And when you bring all of the laws of practical reality to bear, all laws are all law.
primordial consciousness, the knowledge, I am. And with the occurrence of that first event, time began. And that first event was immediately followed by another, the occurrence of the first desire. I will. Instantaneously, by way of the will, came an unfathomably complex, non-physical, multi-dimensional expanse in which all non-material, non-objective principalities, the forces governing order, cause, and effect, would come forth, exist, and reside. And by way of these balanced forces, the enabling extensions of the singular, unified, undifferentiated existence, the will allowed for the presence of a space beyond probability in which material things of the most primordial physical objective nature could and would come into being and exist, the alpha colagrium, within the singular stream of consciousness. With unity persisting, here all events in the physical and objective realm of the omni-singular existence would occur. The perception of the here and now, the realm of present, is where the individual nature, for all intent and purpose, resides. For many, if not most, this, the universal aspect of us, our unified oneness, that which all things and beings are intrinsically linked, operates beyond the perceptions of our physical conscious precepts. And it is this one fact which stands as our only true divine point, our inability to recognize our oneness, and that oneness is pure, unadulterated, unconditional love, that which bestows in the objective as well as subjective realms of perception all love.
Orthodox Moors are not revolutionists. We are evolutionists. A revolution is simply a circle, returning you to the same place in which you began, yet only a bit more tattered and a bit more worn for worse, whereas the natural spiral and evolution of nature is always progressively upward. Well over 30 years ago, as a self-employed private entrepreneur, I was contracted by Children's Hospital, National Care Center, Washington, D.C., to create a device that would greatly reduce the stress and anxiety of their senior surgical staff and ERN. The ERN stands for Executive Registered Nurses. Those were the nurses that were controlling the various centers throughout the hospital. The device I created, of which I retained the intellectual property rights to, was called Secret Excursions. It was a proprietary blend of LFOs, an audio modulating binary frequency module known to reduce stress. The National Care Center was so impressed with the results and the effect it had on the doctors and staff that my services were again contracted by the National Pediatrics Association of America to create another but yet more advanced device. What was more personally important for me, however, was the project that led me into a 10-year scientific exploration into what would actually cause the effect that they were experiencing. That's what I was wondering. In other words, I went on search for the Orpheus tone. After years of trials and tribulations, errors are made along the way in any type of scientific endeavor, and I had the assistance of the Solfegic Institute to identify and finally isolate and create the proprietary LFO blend. This arithmetic binary pulsation of patterns with the LFO's low oscillating frequencies was not merely an aid to assist one in relaxation, but was actually an inducer. It turned out to be a stimuli which actually caused the pineal gland's natural release of secretions similar to serotonin. As a matter of fact, the term secretion comes from the term secret etymologically. One of the vital natural chemicals released from the pineal gland. There are more powerful chemicals released by the pineal gland, some even so powerful as to induce acid travel. Your pineal gland is actually the window to the soul of man. That was the wisdom or the wise dome of King Solomon, the soul of man. Solomon, soul of man. It is you who will begin to create the mathematical permutations of your own future's probability wave collapsing. Einstein said in his final interview, when they asked him the question, "What is reality?" his reply was, "It's the same thing that all of the wise men, sages, gurus, and masterminds of all ages have always said that it was." And he said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. The Planck level is the event horizon between the subjective reality and objective plane of gross existence. Now, when I use the term gross, what is meant there is the physical plane of existence. This is the region where molecules are formed out of subjective reality. Below our physical objective plane of reality, there's a line called the Planck level. Below that, everything is consciousness. This is where probability waves are formed. Probability waves are formed, and then they collapse into reality. When you become the manifester of your own destiny, it is you who causes most of what occurs in your reality. When you become the cause of most of what occurs in your life, you become your own cosmos, the creator of your own event horizon, your own horizon of events, your own Horus zone. In this new Moorish Renaissance and Aquarian age of enlightenment, we are not awakening to repeat the errors of our past, and no disrespect at all meant by the following. It is only that we are a scientific evolution of our predecessors, and they had the ability to exercise the potential in which we have, then we would not be where we are today. We are a new evolutionary breed of Moor, possessing an even higher degree of potential, energy, and intellect than ever before in history. That is why we have been afforded this opportunity to participate in the uplifting of fallen humanity. If we take advantage of the extremely time-sensitive opportunity, it is not inevitable by any means, but certainly possible. Yeshua, the one they call Jesus, said, "You too can do these things and even greater still." Yeshua, the one they call Jesus, was not some son of a lowly carpenter, as you may have been told from the pulpit, but you have to be careful not to be pulled in that pit. If, like King David, his forebearer, was of a lineage all destined to be kings, then how could he, be the son of a lowly carpenter. No, his father, Yeshua's father, Yosef, was of the house of the Davidic order, the powerful order of Melchizedek, which was a teaching lineage. They were not builders of furniture. He was a builder of men's character and spiritual enlightenment, keepers of the covenant. That is why they were so feared and hated by the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the lawyers and the bankers of the time, who were in alliance and allegiance with the Roman European occupiers. Our prophet Noble Drew Ali, or Professor Drew, as I was introduced to his personality by Brother Bay, an engineer at WOL in Washington, D.C., and the owner, Kathy Hughes, back in the 80s, was an individual who, like Yeshua, set an example for us to follow. An example means something or someone who you can aspire to become similarly with. Can you imagine a legion upon legions of Noble Drew Alis? It's possible. But in actuality, we only need a select few, 448,000 perhaps, calibrating at the perfect resonant harmonious frequency to effectuate an instantaneous next evolution, a love-based evolution of man's consciousness out of these dark ages. I'll not have the time or the opportunity in this brief presentation to go into all of the basics of the physics, Moorish science, and or metaphysical methodologies, as it is much more extensively explained in the key. The Moorish science methodology of recalibrating the resonating harmonic frequencies of your individual unique vibratory oscillation, not merely on a cellular level, but on an actual biological atomic level, literally shatters and dissolves the calcium deposits encrusting your pineal gland. This occurs during your rejuvenation periods of sleep as you obtain the correct information in the correct order. Your own crown chakra will radiate into your pineal gland's prana receptors, creating a chi vortex, the virtual spiral of energy, the natural connecting of all of your spiritual organs known as chakra regions will reanimate, triggering as a catalyst. And this catalyst will be the next evolution of humanity. The term prana or chi literally translates to virtual, vital, cosmic energy. Consciousness is billions of times exponentially more powerful than the atomic energy we're familiar with, and far beyond the speed of light, instantaneously, less than a blink of the eye. Detoxifying your pineal gland is critically important to the evolution of your maximum potential. Just as the number 666, not representing something spooky as you may have heard in the pulpits, but again, be weary of not being pulled in those pits. It stands for 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 6 neutrons of the human base molecular carbon module. That's what we are made of. We are base carbon creatures, which if viewed under an electron microscope will reveal the energy radiating from it forms the Star of David. Adam and Eve also, metaphoric literary characters, represent metaphorically not a duality but a polarity. Eve is the evolution of the Adam of man. Orthodox Moors, those who practice